On this episode, we're talking to Robin Wynn from Little Sister in Toronto on the complexities of rum and its path to being the next great spirit, cocktails, and management style and how to build a great program. Podcast with Robin Wynn at Little Sister on Portland, Toronto. Brilliant.
Amazing. Let's cheers to our drink first.
Cheers, brother.
It's not very often we get to do this because you're out and about.
Oh, yeah. Thanks for doing this. So, I made you a Between the Sheets because I think Between the Sheets, to me, I've been personally trying to bring it back as it's this like beautiful classic that's just been completely forgotten about in favor of like a sidecar or something like that. And I think that's that because it's equal parts rum, cognac, and a curacao. I like a 40% alcohol curacao.
Yeah.
So I use Pure Ferrand dry curacao in this, Hennessy VSOP, and Diplomatico Reserva.
Nice.
And so I think, and then a half part of lemon juice shaken. I think it's just got so much balance. And of course, when I think about you, I think about rum.
That's
so
right.
I thought it was a perfect combination.
The rum guy.
Yeah.
Well,
keep this really close.
I mean, this is great because it's like when people think about, oh my God,
keep this really close.
A cognac cocktail. What do I do? What can I do that's really cool, fast, that I have access to on my back bar?
Yeah.
Well, sidecar is like, okay, go, let's do it. It's easy, done. But when you think of something that's like super crushable, that gets, people in the mood for cocktails, and you're like, oh, cognac, it's a fine spirit. We need to do something spirit forward. I feel like this cocktail is the gateway to something that could be more consistent, and, you can drive it, and it's one of those things where instead of just saying, oh, yeah, have a daiquiri margarita, I'm like, have you had a Between the Sheets? What's a Between the Sheets? And this is like very crushable. It's almost very daiquiri-ish for me.
Yeah, and I think that the combinations are interesting because you can go, like, do you go spicy and full on the cognac?
Yeah.
Or do you go spicy and full on the rum? Do you go spicy and full on both? Like, I see the benefits. Like, if I'm going more like lime daiquiri kind of esque or margarita-esque, then I'm going after like a really light rum.
Yeah.
Because I want like sort of vanilla and like a little bit of the spice from it.
Yeah. So almost
like
the
brightness,
still,
like almost even the grassy note still there.
Yeah.
But sometimes you want like something more powerful, so you go like that Diplomatico and get it going that way. So I think, but then the cognac, do you pick like, a huge molasses forward aged rum, and then like a Solera system, something that's been around forever, and then you pick like a really light floral cognac. It's I think those dual base cocktails are rare, and I think this one is particularly intriguing.
Yeah, I look at this and I'm like, like to what you just said, do they complement each other like a handshake? For me, it's like I picture the meme of Arnold Schwarzenegger and Carl Weathers in Predator.
Son of a bitch.
With their muscles flexing. I'm like, that's the cognac and the rum in this cocktail.
Yeah, it's great.
Right? And then like they have to work together. You can't have one that overpowers the other, otherwise the cocktail kind of leans in a different direction. It should be complementary. I think that when you talked about balance, I think if I'm looking at this from a daiquiri perspective, an aged rum in a daiquiri is something that people are like, ooh, do we do that? Is that a thing? I'm like, oh yeah, it's going to add more complexity to it. So this is kind of in that same vein, but just adds a little bit more fruitiness, more richness, a little more roundness to it than you would if you just choose a straight, rum unaged maybe, or a 3-year that's likely off a column still, not a pot still. And, I think it works together. And this is one of those things where I think my cocktail later is almost very similar to this. So great minds that think alike, right?
Brilliant.
So yeah, I think for this cocktail, man, this is almost like what you want to do competition. Like, how can you make Between the Sheets like a better version of itself?
Yeah.
How can you do a riff on it? Well, it's interesting. I'd be up for that kind of a competition.
I've done one with I've taken the rum out, and I've done one with Scotch before. And I played off like the creamy notes in Glenmorangie Kintu-Uban. It's that port finish.
Yeah.
And they've recently changed it, and the flavor profile has changed a little bit in Kintu-Uban. But the old one from a couple of years ago I think the new one's a little older and uses different port casts, but it had this creamy back end finish, and I thought it was really beautiful, especially with VSOP from Hennessy that's got that like red fruit note.
Yeah.
And they worked really, really well together, but it made the drink like super potent.
Yeah. And
like you definitely got more of the, you didn't get that refreshment anymore. You got a lot more of that like, wow, this is 3 ounces of alcohol in this drink. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's the key thing. I think that, when we talk about when bartenders are learning to bartend, the focus should be on balance. And I always say, like, because you travel a lot around the world, I travel a lot around the world for rum things. So for me, if I'm going to go to a bar that I've never been to before, a good test of a bartender is just to order something simple like a daiquiri or a sidecar or between the sheets, and just to understand if they get balance.
Yeah.
Because I know that people can kind of like, you can walk into a bar in southern Florida and they probably give you a daiquiri that's coming out of a neon green slushy machine, and nothing against Florida, or you can go to somewhere in the Caribbean and maybe it's a premix, lime bar mix, or maybe you're going to a bar that has like a fresh juicer that they juice it on the spot and do it, which is, the best thing ever. Or maybe even they do like a fluffy version of lime and do a fluffy daiquiri. Like there's so many ways to look at it, but ultimately it comes down to the balance of sweet, sour, and alcohol. And to me, if I walk into a bar, I don't care if it's, a dive bar to the world's top 50. It's always a test to know if I'm going to have a good cocktail off their regular menu. If they can balance a daiquiri or one of those simple ones that requires, balance where there's nowhere to hide. It's like I know that those cocktails are going to be great. So,
yeah, I think it was Angus Winchester used to go into bars and order something off their menu, but order it from like 2 or 3 different bartenders.
Yeah.
To make sure like they're all like, are the specs the same per bartender? But yeah, I would agree. Like going in and getting just something simple, a sour, that Daisy riff, like understanding the balance. And honestly, I think when you and I were coming up, it was bartending. It was like you had to know the cocktails.
Yeah.
And now there are so many more cocktails that you can't possibly know. I don't care if you remember the exact specs of something, especially something you haven't made in a while. Like, know some of your classics, know things like that. But if you don't know what a between the sheets is, I do not care. Look it up right in front of me.
Yeah.
What I do care is if when you read those specs, you go, all right, so yeah, we've got lemon juice in here. Cool. These are the cognacs I have available. These are the rums I have available. And you're immediately starting to assess like which ones are going to pair well together in that drink. And the Curacao, I find the Curacao is, this is annoying from the sidecar, that I think the sidecar is one of the most mismade cocktails because like triple sec or Curacao, orange is the most common liqueur flavor on the planet because it's been around for so long. And there's so many iconic people doing it, Cointreau and Grand Marnier and the whole entire aisle of Curacao that they vary quite a degree. And when a new sales reps come into a bar and goes, hey, use my one. Well, where's the balance on that one? Is it sweeter? Is it super potently orange? Is it going to throw off the balance of the drink flavor-wise? Is it going to throw it off like sweet-wise? Or is it not sweet enough so it's the sour is coming through without adjusting? And I think like reading the specs and, a Manhattan's a Manhattan. But if your sweet vermouth is crazy different, what's that going to do to it?
See, and that's where like we have like at Little Sister, but also in past experiences, understanding that we work in Ontario in a controlled liquor state where it's like I am only available to use what I can get my hands on legally from the government or what a private wine importer brings in. So, if you look at what was bog standard for us, Cinzano, Martini, and maybe something else, and now we've got probably 15 to 20 options to choose. We are working in a live bar and people are coming in and out. So how's it going, Jen? It's all good. I think that understanding that now we look at things, and even in past experiences when we talk about spirit blending, it's like instead of just saying this one rum is going to work, or this one vermouth is going to work, or in a Manhattan, it has to be one and one of specific brands.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, why not blend your best whiskey base or whatever your base spirit is for your Manhattan riff? And why not blend your vermouth blend to come up with something that kind of fits what you're looking for in the flavor profile? It's almost taboo, and I know because in our controlled state, brands want to see their names on a menu, and if they don't see their name, like for instance, Cinzano, they might want to see that. The Campari rep might want to see that on the menu. But if you put a house blend vermouth and they don't see that, it's like, wow, they get all upset. So for me, but trying to get bartenders beyond that thinking, and for brands to understand, we're still buying your product, but to come up with a perfect blend of your split base. So if it's, like I said, if it's a whiskey base, maybe it's a blend of a dry rye, and maybe there's a little bit of bourbon, maybe you put a drop of scotch in there, a little bit taboo, just to round it out. I think that as we look at like spirit blenders, master blenders, distillers as people that are creating lovely products, so can bartenders. And I think in this case, I don't think it's crazy to say, what if you did a split base of your orange liqueur, your curacao, to get more roundness? I think that understanding as we move forward that rigidity in a cocktail recipe is there to create a standard, but for to make something better, it doesn't always have to be like a completely new riff. You can just take your base spirits and say, I'm going to make a more rounded vermouth that might have more floral notes, instead of going heavy on a cola note, or herbaceousness. I think these are things where bartenders need to look into and say, you know what, we have a daiquiri on the menu, and we don't just use one rum. It's not going to be just one rum. It's going to be probably a blend of 3 rums to create the Goldilocks effect, and the more people look at cocktails like that, even for between the sheets, it's like you said, if you're going to take the rums and that you want to work with in a cognac, why not just test them all out? Okay, so let's say you love Hennessy. Okay, so maybe you pick 3 different.
It's a good bet.
Yeah, I would hope so.
Yeah.
Pick 3 rums and taste them with the Hennessy and see which one works the best. Or if I'm a rum guy and I'm going to take 3 or 4 cognacs, I'm going to choose the rum I like, and then I'm going to try it with 3 different cognacs and see which one sings. And then I know the foundation of that cocktail, the base of what everything's going to be built on, is going to tell me whether that cocktail is going to sing.
Yeah.
Right. And I think bartenders should look at that, and start there.
Yeah. I've often said that it's like bartenders don't make drinks in a bubble. They're making them for consumers.
Yeah.
And so if the consumers are liking them, then that needs to be up laddered to brands, to sales team, to understand what's happening there. There's a reason that's happening. Is it the fact that you couldn't get certain products here because you're in a control state? Is it the fact that, your bar is focused on, little sister, Indonesian food? So you've got a certain flavor profile coming out in the food. The drink should represent that. So is that the reason that, there's multiple reasons for decisions going on within a bar. Some are cost effective, and some are style, and some are multiple things. So it's everyone needs to look at those different things. Now, when it comes to that business side, have you found a happy balance of working with brands to get that message across to say, hey, we're going to do it. We're using you, but it may not reflect that because we don't want a 1 paragraph long cocktail description. I
mean, I don't want to speak about every market, but I can speak to our market, because I've seen in some other markets where, they don't say the brand. They just say, American whiskey or, orange liqueur, blah, 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 blah. And for us, the challenges I have is when we talk about brand support without talking about monetary.
Yeah.
Because that never happens.
Never.
I think understanding that hey, we're using a product, but we want to showcase it more beautifully than it is. And in a positive light, saying I can get a Manhattan with a 2-to-1 ratio or whatever, a couple drops of Angostura anywhere in the world with your base product. But you're almost stifling creativity in bartenders by saying it has to be this way. And for a brand, without saying remove the ego from seeing your brand name on that menu, but like your sales still reflect. Like if you're looking at it from a brand perspective, yeah, we want to see menu placement so that we can take our esteemed guests from around the world and showcase a bar or showcase our product. Look at this, our product's in this bar. But also like look at your KPIs, key performance indicators, and
The business mind of Robin Wynn.
The business side where they're like, I need to see you selling cases of our stuff, right? I'm like, I'm going to sell it, just not conventionally the way you want to see it advertised or displayed. But I'm going to move through it because we're making a cocktail that's even better. And I don't know why that would be a challenge for a brand, other than the fact is it's like ego boosting for them to say, well, we need to see brand placement. We need to see a product on the back bar, on a menu. We're going to give you all these things. Maybe we fly you down to a nice luxury, seminar, or we're going to take you down to our distillery. But like all these promises are based on the fact that we're selling your product. Mm-hmm. And if we're selling your product, be thankful that we're selling your product, and maybe more than we would have if it were just a normal cocktail recipe. Yeah. And to me, that was the one thing at our previous place where I was like, man, I want to create a nice funky rum blend, but the LCBO, or local liquor control board, doesn't really care about Jamaican rum other than Appleton's. It's a pay-to-play market. Appleton's probably pays to say we're the only Jamaican rum on the shelf.
Jamaican rum by far, yeah.
Yeah, and we are the largest consumers of Appleton's in the world because of that fact. But I think that when we're talking about what that means for brands is saying, well, let's just focus on what we can do to promote the brand and create our own funky rum blend. And, maybe it's a blend of 5 different rums that we can get either privately through consignment or through the LCBO and make our own Jamaican rum blend that we think works well. And it creates an identity. And this is the one thing I've noticed in bars. It's like, for me, my experience, for guys like you, for guys like Nishan, from Sophia Restaurant, who was at Blowfish for 14 years on King West with us, you can create a name for yourself as a bartender through longevity at a bar, and you are kind of symbiotic with the bar. Either you grow with the bar's reputation because you're creating something more for that bar, or the bar becomes more successful and you work within it and you become successful because of it. People that move around a lot, they might see some short-term success because they're working at a special bar, and maybe that looks good on a resume. But if you're working at a bar that is, okay, we're taking it to the next step. We're going to create same cocktails, classics, but we're going to go above and beyond with our own house blend of this, our own house blend of that. We're going to make our own house orange liqueur. We're going to make our own house blackberry liqueur because we have the education and the confidence to do so. I think you're just going to make a better experience, right? So all these things come down to one thing, and that's making a better experience for the guest.
So that's interesting you say that, staying at a place longer helps build your name along, like you grow along with a program. And presumably you're there longer, you get more influence on that program. I first heard your name when you were working at Finn McCool's on King West, which at the time was starting to pick up in Toronto as like an emergency. And then now, as we sit a block from it, it's like the nightlife scene in Toronto is all on King West. And that location of Finn McCool's that was there is the literal cornerstone or the heart of that street. Yeah. So what about that? Like, there's nothing, you could go to any other Finn McCool's in Canada and not find that experience. Well, so what prompted that with you? Where was the switch that flicked that got you going in there? Like, what's your career trajectory that led to like that moment?
Yeah, I mean, my first day, actually, ironically, working with Prime Restaurants at the time, Finn McCool's is one of the Prime pub divisions. And I'd worked for Prime Restaurants, opening new restaurants for 10 years with them. Well, 8 to 10 years, on and off. And I saw an ad for a place I was looking to become more central in Toronto rather than the outskirts and the suburbs working. And these guys were, Irish pub, King West, heart of Toronto, looking for bar management. And at the time, I was looking to get into the downtown core. And the day I showed up for my interview, they're like, hey, we're Finn McCool's, but we're defranchising. We're going to divorce Finn McCool's. So it became Finn's at Temple Bar. So my first day officially on the job was seeing all these people from Prime Restaurants that I knew that I've worked for in the corporate setting in there, making sure that there was no trace of Finn McCool's, and it was now Finn's and Temple Bar. So it was a great moment for that bar to kind of become a local neighborhood King West pub with great food, great atmosphere in the middle of the entertainment district, which at the time was an advertising commercial company buildings, and then you had some local bars and restaurants, a couple of nightclubs at the time, and you know we'd been operating. I've been there for 4 years under the guise of pub stuff and creating locals. We were industry hotspot. I mean, you were next door at Versailles, and so we got to know everybody in the neighborhood, and we would create regulars, and then I got invited to do a cocktail competition on a whim, and I was the Caesar King, so Bloody Caesar cocktail. I was the king of Canada at that time. So I entered it obviously with the Caesar because that's what my wheelhouse was. And I didn't even place. I didn't win or anything, but I did sell. Well, I did take the most tickets out of anybody, but I was an unknown in the scene. And at that point, it was, you know, it was told to me by Kevin Broch. He's like, you know, was very honest with me. He's like, you're never going to win a cocktail competition with a Caesar. I'm like, fair play, you know. And that kind of got me down the path of thinking, okay, I want to win this thing next year. And started working on cocktails. And in King West, there were places like Blowfish with Nishan and Versailles with you that were creating cocktails. But the rest were nightclubs and restaurants that were kind of like not really caring. And so I started working on stuff. I started meeting brand reps who were like, come to this competition. Let's enter this one, and started doing well. And I realized that we could introduce better cocktails in a pub setting and be successful and actually blindside people coming in like, oh, we're just going to go to this Irish pub. You know, we'll have some beers and some vodka sodas and some chicken tikka masala and some Guinness stew and have a good time. And we know it's easy. And then you present them with this cocktail program like, oh my God, look, these are martinis, these are cocktails. And they're like, whoa, this is actually kind of cool. And it just kind of ballooned from there. And, you know, we got approached by brands that only deal exclusively with restaurants and nightclubs and don't deal with pubs. And they're like, we like what you're doing. We want to be a part of this. And it just kind of furthered the belief that like you could create something within something without changing the identity. And for me, it was all about, if we're under the radar or we're blindsiding people and creating great guest experiences because they weren't expecting it, I mean, that's a win every time in the industry. And if you're in a hot spot, let's say in all the nightclubs like your place, and all the places are full and people are like, oh, let's just go drink at the Irish pub. But you're creating something in there that like they weren't expecting. They're going to be like, wow, that was great. And they're going to come back. They're going to tell their friends. And then when they're in King West, they might start at your place or they might end at your place. So we just kept growing it. And it became a thing where we were making cocktails along with a couple other places like yourself, making cocktails famous in King West and creating cocktail culture in an entertainment district where most people might not think that was the case. And it just kind of grew from there. And I think that's one of the instances where you look at it and say, you know, we created the name of Finn's and it was successful because we created an identity for it by creating these opportunities and cocktails and experiences. And I think a bartender who can grow into that and say, okay, and I always see bartenders moving around. I'm like, well, why did you move around? And it's like, well, the owners I never lived up to the promises. You know, they made all these promises and it didn't come through. And, you know, and I'm like, well, was there any compromise? Did you want to work within the parameters of what they needed? Was there dialogue? Was there communication? And, it's like I was willing to work within what I could in the confines of understanding I have 189 seats and I'm 3 deep at the bar on a Saturday. What can I do? Wow, let's just make these cocktails super easy and super crushable, and people enjoyed them. And, you know, I think that's kind of where you build your name. It's like, well, I've been successful because I perfected what we needed to do. And I'm a firm believer that if you move around so much, the questions arise and like there's a red flag, like why are you moving around so much? If you've been in a place and you've made your name successful at it and the bar is successful because of the symbiotic relationship, that speaks to me more volumes about the character of yourself, your bar ethos, and your work ethic.
Yeah. I think you have a cocktail.
I got a cocktail to make. Okay, so I'll just talk about it because I don't know if I'm going to have the microphone on me while I'm doing it. So we're going to make a Gale Seal daiquiri. So I'll make that. I'll go off.
Done.
And you can kind of fill in what we're doing.
Yeah, I'll do the play-by-play. Yeah, I didn't know where to put everything when I made my drink.
That's okay. You've never worked on this bar yet. Maybe we'll get you on the bar.
One of my favorite moments is being, I get traveling around as the ambassador for Hennessy. I get to go behind many different bars, and it's really cool to see individual setups. The problem is you're the new guy every time. You're like, where's the lime juice again?
We've kind of made it easy on this one. So we're using 2 ounces of, we're swagging out on this one. We're using the Biliari, which is, about 125 American a bottle, so not cheap. And it's a great rum.
Jesus.
We're going to swag it out. You're worth swagging for. 3/4 lime, so 1.5 ounces for 2. And yes, I realize I'm shaking 2 cocktails in 1 strainer.
I don't have a problem with that. As my aforementioned club scene background, I was asked this recently, and I said, listen, sort of to your point, I'm going to use that, your blind tasting method. If you can't taste a difference in a blind tasting, then what's the problem? And I look at it like, if I can shake it, if I have to shake it slightly longer or, do something else, I'm going to do that to make sure the drink is good. But I'd rather get the drink faster than wait 20 minutes for the drink by putting each one in an individual shaker.
Agreed. And this is like, honestly, and again, we're using a 62% instead of a 43%. So it might have a bit more heat to it. So we've used 2 ounces of rum, 3/4 lime, half falernum, 1/4 simple, and 4 dashes of Angostura bitters per cocktail. So I love Angostura, so I'm going to go heavy.
Not as much as Giuseppe Gonzalez loves it.
You know what? Him and I love it the same. He's a great guy. I've met him a couple times. And he's like, if I could drink Angostura straight, I would, because it's that great.
Jesus. All right. Challenge throwdown. Think you're going to win.
When you can buy Angostura, you can actually buy it in 55-gallon drums. And I want to get to that level of bartending where I can say I'm successful enough that I've bought gallon drums of Angostura. I think costs like $5,000, but that's the price I'd be willing to pay.
Solid shake.
Heavy shake or 2 cocktails. Full draft ice. You see how cold it is? Yeah, ice forming there.
I use the term, if it's too cold to hold, your drink is chill enough.
Yes, I agree 100%. So we're going to strain this one out. We'll do the double strain trick because nobody likes floating icebergs in a cocktail.
I don't.
Again, look at the color, almost like you're between the sheets. We're using 8-ounce coops, so last few bits. Can't really see it, but nobody likes that ice in a cocktail. Never.
No. Well, some people do, and I find that incredibly strange. Like the people that want ice chips floating in a martini glass. I'm like, why?
If I wanted water, I would ask for water. So there's your Gale Seal daiquiri. You have mine.
Brilliant.
And again, this is like a standard cocktail around the world now. So, cheers. Your first Gale Seal.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
It was nice that we tasted the rum beforehand because you really do get that come through.
Yeah, and again, it's an intense rum, ex-bourbon cask. It's going to be intensity. Foursquare has a few releases that are ex-bourbon. They do a yearly vintage.
That's amazing. So, on that note, advice for a young bartender.
I think that if you're going to get into the industry and you're getting into it because you want to become the rock star bartender, you might as well just don't. And what I mean by that, it's nothing to say that you can't be a rock star bartender, because you can be. I've seen people do all of it, but do it for the right reasons. Do it because you want to create a great hospitality experience. Do it because you care about the people sitting across the bar from you. Do it because you care about your paycheck and longevity in the industry. Do it because you want your bar to be successful, right? The grass isn't always greener on the other side. It's greener where you water it. And if you're at a bar where you water your grass, it's going to be successful. You just got to take care of it. I think that if you're going to move forward and you want to become a bartender who has cocktails on the menu, everybody can make the standard cocktails, but what makes your cocktail great? There was a great thing that I experienced at Tiki by the Sea, which is run in the States and in Europe, like a 5-day rum tropical immersion thing. And there was all these kind of people talking about rum and other spirits, but this guy came in and talked about the business of tiki, but it wasn't actually the business of tiki. It was like, why do people come to your bar? And why do people sit at your bar, and why do people want to order drinks off you? Is it because your personality, you're hospitable, and they like the fact that they can come in, you know their name, you kind of know what they want already, and you understand what's going on in their life because of small talk, and they know that when they go there, they're going to have a great experience. It's standard, it's consistent, and you actually care about what they're doing. An emotional experience is great. Frankie Slark from Bar Chef said, what's the greatest thing about your bar? He's like, I have the privilege of changing somebody's life through the medium of a glass. If they're having a shit day, I can give them a cocktail and experience across the bar, which might make them have a better end to the day than what they started. And that's what we'd all strive for, is like a great experience at the bar or in a restaurant if you're a server or if you're a support staff. Every single level should be like, I want to make this guest experience better. And I think as a bartender, if you come in the industry and you're just like, I just want to be the hottest shit on the market. I want to dominate the bar industry, win every competition. I want to work at all the best places and make all the money. At the end of it, like, you're not going to achieve all those things. It's not realistic. You might achieve a certain percentage of that. But that's going to take a lot of work, a lot of legwork, a lot of hard work. And I think that if you come into the industry and you want to be guest focused, it's going to be your biggest advantage moving forward.
That's amazing. Robin, thanks for adding your knowledge to the collective, because I think you're somebody I respect in this industry. You're somebody that's done it a long time.
Thank you.
You've succeeded in a lot of ways within this industry, whether it be from bartending ethos to running establishments, running multiple establishments. So thank you for your time, and thanks for the knowledge, man. Like, that's it's been really fun.
Cheers.
We'll do this again.
Obviously, as friends, it's great to see us both succeed in the industry.
Love you, brother.
I love you. Cheers.
Talk soon.
Cheers.
Bye.